Hey everyone, and welcome. With everything happening in the world, especially all the talk about a potential peace deal in Gaza, there's a huge question buzzing around. Is this it? Is this the kind of event the Bible talks about as a sign of the end times? Today, we're going to dig into that, look at the actual prophecies, and see what they really say.
So let's just state it plainly. A Middle East peace plan. Is this the prophetic sign that so many people have been watching and waiting for? It's a massive question, and to even begin to answer it, we've got to go straight to the source material.
All right, to really get to the bottom of this, we need to start with the one verse that is, the absolute heart of this whole end times peace treaty idea. For a lot of people, this single verse is the cornerstone for everything else. And here it is, Daniel 9:27. It says, "And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering." Now, just reading that, it sounds pretty cryptic, right? A bit dense. So let's break down how this is usually interpreted.
Okay, so this is the popular take you've probably heard. The covenant is understood to be a future 7-year peace treaty involving Israel, and the he who makes this deal, that's believed to be a future world leader, the Antichrist, who then breaks the treaty halfway through. But, and this is absolutely crucial, look at that last point. The actual phrase peace deal isn't in the text at all. That's an interpretation that's been added on.
So what if that popular interpretation, the one we all hear about, is actually based on a huge case of mistaken identity? There's another way to read this verse, a much older way, in fact, that completely changes the meaning of everything.
You see, the whole theory hinges on that one little pronoun, he. The entire thing rests on who that person is. So we have to ask the most important question here. What if he isn't the Antichrist at all? So here you can see the two main interpretations side by side. You've got the Antichrist view, where he is some future villain making a political treaty. But then you have the Christ-centered view. In this reading, he is the Messiah, Jesus Christ. The covenant isn't a peace treaty, it's the new covenant he established with humanity. And that week, it's not a future tribulation. It was fulfilled 2,000 years ago at Christ's first coming. So, does the text actually back up this Christ-centered view? Well, let's look. The prophecy says someone will confirm the covenant. Fast forward to the book of Romans, where Paul says Christ came to confirm the promises God made. The prophecy says he will cause sacrifice to cease. Well, the book of Hebrews tells us that Christ's one sacrifice on the cross made all other sacrifices obsolete. And finally, Daniel's prophecy says the Messiah will be cut off, a clear reference to the crucifixion. It lines up perfectly.
Okay, so let's pause for a second. If Daniel 9:27 is really about Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, well, that kind of blows a giant hole in the whole end times peace deal theory, doesn't it? So the next logical question is there another prophecy somewhere else in the Bible that talks about this?
And this is where it gets really interesting. Because according to the source material, when you actually search the entire Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, you find nothing. There is no other passage that explicitly predicts a future political peace treaty in the Middle East as a specific end times sign. The idea just isn't there. So does that mean the Bible is just silent about peace in the last days? Oh, not at all. It has a lot to say, but it warns us about a very different kind of peace. It's not about a diplomatic deal, it's about a dangerous, widespread deception. And you can see this pattern pop up again and again. The prophets Jeremiah and Ezekiel both warn about false prophets crying peace, peace when there is no peace. The Apostle Paul in 1 Thessalonians is even more direct. He says when people are saying peace and safety, that's when sudden destruction will come. Daniel warns about a ruler who uses peace as a weapon for conquest. The theme is so consistent. A false sense of security always comes right before judgment. So the big takeaway here is unmistakable. Scripture isn't telling us to watch the news for a diplomatic success story. It's telling us to be wary of a powerful illusion of safety, a feeling that lulls the world into a false sense of security right before the end. This really reframes everything. If we're not supposed to be scanning the headlines for a peace treaty, then what in the world should we be watching for? Well, believe it or not, the Bible gives us a very different prophetic checklist. And here's that sequence, the one the Bible actually tells us to watch for. It starts with a global cry of peace and safety, that illusion we just talked about. That's followed by a rise in religious deception and a widespread moral collapse. Then comes persecution of believers, and when the message of the gospel has finally reached all nations, that's when the end comes with Christ's return. Notice something? It's a spiritual and moral timeline, not a political one.
Okay, knowing all of this, it naturally leads to a really practical final question. What is the believer's role in all of this? How are we supposed to process world events, like a Gaza peace plan, in light of what these prophecies actually say?
The biblical answer is really more about our posture than our predictions. We're told not to set dates because the timing is in God's hands alone. We're called to be spiritually watchful and alert, not just armchair news analysts. And we have to remember, the focus of all prophecy is ultimately about Christ's kingdom, not earthly politics. At the end of the day, true readiness is simply being found faithful and obedient.
And it all comes down to this one profound, powerful verse from the book of Revelation. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. What does that mean? It means that in the end, every single prophecy, every sign, every warning, it's all designed to do one thing: point us directly to Him. And that is a truth that stands firm no matter what the headlines say.